Deep in the heart of Redwood National Park, a group of friends huddled around a crackling campfire. The air was thick with the smell of burning pine and wood smoke. The friends Jake, Emily, Ben, Sophia, and Chris were sharing stories and laughter, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. They were on a week-long camping trip, eager to escape the city and reconnect with nature. The conversation drifted towards local legends and the mysteries that the ancient forest held.
Have you guys heard about the legend of the Whispering Woods? It's a restricted area deep within the park. Locals claim it's inhabited by strange creatures. They say the woods whisper secrets to those who dare to enter.
Don't even joke about that, Jake. It sounds creepy.
Yeah, man, let's stick to the trails. No need to tempt fate.
There's probably a reason why it's off limits. Could be dangerous.
What if it's true? What if there really is something out there?
Emily shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around herself. Ben chuckled nervously. Sophia, ever the pragmatist, chimed in, and Chris, usually the quiet one, surprised everyone with his question.
That's what I'm saying. Imagine the story we could tell if we actually saw something.
Yeah, a story about how we barely escaped with our lives. No thanks.
But Jake's words had planted a seed of curiosity in their minds. The lure of the unknown, the thrill of venturing into forbidden territory, was a powerful draw.
Come on, guys. Just a peek. What's the worst that could happen?
Despite their apprehension, the group found themselves agreeing to Jake's dare. They decided to hike to the edge of the Whispering Woods, just to see it with their own eyes. They packed up their gear and set off the next morning, a mix of trepidation and exhilaration coursing through them. The forest grew denser as they hiked deeper, the sunlight struggling to penetrate the thick canopy of leaves. The air grew heavy with the smell of damp earth and pine needles. The usual sounds of the forest bird's song and rustling leaves were replaced by an unsettling silence.
This is starting to creep me out.
Sophia whispered, her voice barely audible above the crunch of their footsteps. They continued for another hour, their unease growing with every step. The silence was broken only by the sound of their own breathing and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. Then, they began to hear it, a faint whispering sound, carried on the wind.
Did you hear that?
Emily asked, her eyes wide with fear. Ben strained his ears, listening intently.
I think it's just the wind through the trees.
But the whispering grew louder, more distinct. It seemed to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It was then that they noticed the symbols carved into the trees. Strange, ancient-looking markings that sent shivers down their spines. Section 5. The Clearing. They pushed on, their apprehension turning to full-blown fear. The whispering was now a cacophony, swirling around them like a living thing. They stumbled into a clearing, the trees thinning out to reveal a circular patch of ground bathed in an unnatural, ethereal glow. In the center of the clearing stood a towering redwood, its branches reaching towards the sky like skeletal fingers. At the base of the tree, they saw them, the source of the whispers, the reason for the eerie silence of the forest. Creatures. Their bodies were humanoid in form, but their skin was covered in scales, their eyes glowed with an eerie light, and their mouths were filled with rows of sharp teeth. They moved with a sinuous grace that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. Section 6. Signs of the Unknown. For a moment, the group stood frozen, their minds struggling to comprehend what their eyes were seeing. The creatures seemed to take no notice of them, their attention focused on some unseen ritual taking place at the base of the tree.
We need to get out of here, she whispered, her voice trembling.
They turned to leave, their steps slow and cautious, but it was too late. One of the creatures, larger than the others, turned its head towards them, its glowing eyes fixing them in its gaze. It let out a hissing growl, the sound sending a jolt of terror through their veins. Section 7. A Glimmer in the Darkness. The creature lunged. Jake shoved Emily out of the way, the creature's claws narrowly missing her. They scrambled back, their hearts pounding in their chests. The clearing was no longer a place of wonder, it was a hunting ground. The creatures advanced, their hisses and growls echoing through the forest. They were surrounded, trapped. Jake grabbed a fallen branch, wielding it like a weapon. He knew it was futile, but he was determined to fight back.
Run, he shouted, his voice hoarse with fear.
They scattered, adrenaline pumping through their veins. The creatures gave chase, their movements unnaturally fast and fluid. Trees whipped past as they ran, their lungs burning, their legs screaming for respite. The whispering followed them, a constant reminder of the danger that lurked behind every tree. Emily stumbled, falling to the ground. She looked back to see one of the creatures bearing down on her, its claws outstretched. She closed her eyes, bracing for the impact, but it never came. She opened her eyes to see Chris standing over her, his backpack slung over his shoulder, a look of fierce determination on his face.
Get up, we have to keep moving!
They ran until they could run no more, their bodies battered and bruised, their clothes torn. They collapsed on the forest floor, gasping for air, their minds still reeling from the encounter. The whispering had stopped, but the silence that replaced it was just as unnerving.
What were those things?
No one answered. They were all too shaken, too terrified to even speak. They had stumbled into something ancient, something evil, and they were lucky to be alive. They spent the rest of the night huddled together for warmth and comfort, their eyes darting nervously at every shadow, every rustle of leaves. The forest, once a place of peace and tranquility, was now a source of terror. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the canopy, they slowly got to their feet. They were battered and bruised, but they were alive. They gathered their scattered belongings and began the long trek back to their campsite, their silence speaking volumes about the horrors they had witnessed. They reached their campsite later that morning, their faces pale and drawn, their eyes haunted by the memories of the night before. They packed up their gear and left the Whispering Woods behind, never to return. The experience had changed them, marked them in a way that they couldn't quite explain. They had looked into the abyss, and the abyss had looked back. And in that moment, they had glimpsed a darkness that existed just beyond the veil of their everyday reality, a darkness that would forever haunt their dreams.